I built my own web crawler following Be a Better Dev's YouTube series. This video goes over a few things I learned during this process. When you create an AWS account, the account you log in with using your email is your root account. You should create an IAM user account to access and control resources on AWS. This IAM user will also have an access key and a secret key, allowing you to set up the AWS CLI on your local machine and access AWS resources locally. To write a Lambda function, you can either write it directly in the code editor on AWS Lambda, or you can write the code locally and name your Python file the same as the function name in the AWS code editor. If you are using third-party libraries such as Beautiful Soup 4, you must include the package source code along with your Lambda function file in a zip file. Then you can upload that zip file to AWS Lambda. To install Python packages in a custom directory, you can use the pip command with the -t flag. Assuming you have a queue created in the AWS SQS, for the Lambda function to consume the queue, you need to grant permissions. Either give the queue permission to access the Lambda function or allow the Lambda function to access the queue. Once this is set up, you can push messages to the queue using the Boto3 library. The events will be accessible in the events parameter of the Lambda handler function. I will link some resources in the descriptions that shows you how to use the Boto3 and explain how AWS event works. To view the messages in your queue, click on the Send and Receive Messages button and then click on Start Polling for Messages. If you don't want your messages to be consumed in real time, you can disable this in the queue settings. When you're ready, enable it again to allow the messages to be consumed by your Lambda function. For setting up dynamodb, ensure you're on the provisioned capacity mode, which is the default setting if you're working on a demo project and want to avoid being charged. Avoid the on-demand mode as it is not included in the AWS free tier. I made this mistake and ended up getting charged. To enable your Lambda function to store and retrieve data from the DynamoDB, you have to grant the necessary permissions. Just as we did for the SQS service, you can also use Boto3 library to interact with DynamoDB. For debugging, AWS CloudWatch stores logs from your Lambda functions. You can view these logs to debug your program if you encounter issues. However, for Lambda to create logs in CloudWatch, you need to grant permission to read and write logs. One thing I recommend when you're doing this project is checking the pricing structure of each service to at least understand the basic pricing structure. Among the services that I used in this project, I found that DynamoDB's pricing to be the most confusing. But if you're on the provision mode and it's just a demo project, most likely you won't be going over the capacity and won't get charged. Lastly, you want to make sure that you have the AWS billing alerts turned on so that if you do get charged, you can get notified right away. That's it. Thanks for watching.